The situation's changed. Something new has happened. Should I tell my lawyer about this? We're going to talk about it on today's Monday Morning Lawyer. Good morning, everybody. It's Jobeth Bowers, your accident and injury attorney, coming at you from my new Elkton office. That's right. We moved the office down the street. Phone numbers and everything's still the same. If you are a current client, you should notice zero disruption to service. Everything went smoothly with the move from Friday in through the weekend, getting everything set up. So yeah, we've kind of been working nonstop to make sure that there's no disruption in service to our current clients. If you are in need of our services for a new accident, don't hesitate to give us a call. We are here. Today, we're going to talk about communication. I did an episode on this sometime last year. This is going to be a little bit of a different twist on it, but it really boils down to the importance of communicating with your attorney. And I will say that this applies not just to the accident and injury cases that we handle, but most likely to everything that you're going to engage the services of an attorney for. Now, you're not telling them your entire life story every time for every situation, but keep in mind that telling them more is probably good, especially if there's even a remote chance that it applies to your situation. So we're going to talk about some of these scenarios that might apply to an accident case. You can kind of extrapolate where that might apply to other situations. And I've noticed that there are things that when people decide to keep them from us or are hesitant about offering them, it may be because they're fearing bad news. What's going to happen if I tell the attorney this? But I want to focus on what's going to happen if I don't tell my attorney this, okay? In the context of accident cases, some of the obvious ones are about medical care. We need to know to adequately represent you and your interests in an injury case. Each and every doctor that has seen you, every x-ray, every CT, every MRI, everything, every referral to a specialist, we need to know about it. Most of the time, we'll be able to figure out that you want somewhere else by reading the other medical records of the other providers. Hey, I referred Johnny for an MRI. Well, I don't have anything in here about an MRI. And then 2 weeks later, there's, hey, this is what the results of the MRI were. Obviously, we could put that together, but time is a factor. If we know about the MRI or whatever other medical care as it's happening, we can request that bill, that record, shortly after it is generated. If we have to wait until the orthopedic doctor who referred you for the MRI sends us their records and we read through and say, hey, this person had an MRI that they didn't tell us about, all of the medical treatment might be finished at the time that we're requesting some of the bills and records for it. And it hurts you because it slows the claim down in a way that it didn't have to be. Because if we know about it, we request it live, so to speak, not necessarily at the end, because sometimes these orthopedic doctors take a month to send us the records. So if you had the care and presumably the MRI happened somewhere in the middle of the care, and we're not getting the records until the end of the care, plus a couple of weeks, sometimes even a whole month, that's several months that we could have already had the MRI record, the MRI bill, and everything that goes with it. So it's your time that's being messed with here. Additionally, and we're the bad news situation, like I'm afraid to tell my attorney because, if you pick up a speeding ticket, if you get up some other sort of charge, if somebody summons you to court for something else, it's important that we know about it. It may not play into your case directly, but the more we know, the less that we're potentially getting thrown at, let's say in the middle of the deposition, where we learn about something that happened. We're not going to change the facts. We're not going to change and tell you to say something different or lie. But boy, oh boy, do we not want that surprised look on the other end of the deposition table in that conference room where we're finding out about something for the very first time because defense counsel is asking you about it. Again, these are very, very rare situations, but it's super important that we know. Back to the medical bill thing, the records thing, if we don't know about it and it kind of flies under the radar, like let's say you went to a primary care doctor throughout and you didn't think about that as important to the case, but you mentioned the accident and you received guidance from that doctor about your injuries from the accident, we need to know about it. Number one, if it's not in there, it's not part of the claim. So we're potentially leaving money that's your money on the table by not including all of the medical care. Secondly, if they run that through health insurance and we don't tell the health insurance company, if they don't know that it's related, they may end up saying, oh, look, we reviewed the codes here 6, 8 months later, sometimes after the case is resolved. We've reviewed all these procedure codes and realized that maybe we should have been reimbursed for these two. Since we weren't, we're going to go to the doctor and say, send us our money back. That was accident related. We didn't get reimbursed for it. So you owe us the money back. And then it creates a whole situation with your primary care doctor in that bill. They're upset. You're upset. And we're in the middle of this, an avoidable situation that we could have gotten ahead of. Prior accidents, prior injuries, prior medical care. These are also those situations where the more we know about it, the more we can attack it properly going into it. Again, you don't want your attorney being surprised in the middle of a deposition or in the middle of trial. This is the last thing that you want if you want success in this case. It's as simple as an email, a text message, a phone call to somebody here at the office, whether it's one of the attorneys, some of our staff. Hey, by the way, I got referred to this doctor. Hey, by the way, I got in another accident this weekend. Hey, this happened. I suffered this sort of an injury. I was at a sporting event and I tripped and fell down some stairs in the stands and my knee's a little banged up. These things aren't part of the case, but knowing that, hey, this happened and it's something that we want to address and get ahead of, super important for our ability as an office to advocate properly for you. A lot of times, another thing that we see that kind of we don't want slipping through the cracks, so knowing about it ahead of time, is you get in this accident, you get injured, the doctor, the hospital, or otherwise says, hey, take a week off of work, take 4 days off of work. The follow-up doctor says, take another week. Then you're kind of back to normal. You go through therapy. We've gotten all the documentation from that week or so that you missed from work. And then somebody says, hey, we want you to have this injection, take 3 more days off of work. Or you need this surgery and you're going to need to take 6 weeks off of work. We need to know about this because sometimes at that point, the medical providers are not always giving you the proper documentation. For whatever reason, they know to do it at the very beginning, but not always throughout the process. So again, those are pieces of documentation that we would need to be able to put together that additional section of the wage claim. And again, we can't assume. And again, doctors are really focused on the care that you need and getting you better. Some doctors are better than others at documenting that progress. So if they're a great doctor that's not the best at papering a file and putting the record together, there's a disconnect there. But you telling us, hey, I went to this referral, I missed 4 days of work, and here's where the doctor said to not go to work for those 4 days, or whatever it might be, we need to know about it so that we can collect it, save you some time, and move this thing forward for you at a reasonable pace. These are just some of the reasons why communicating with your attorney is super important. If you get summoned for court, usually for some sort of criminal or traffic charges related to the person who caused the accident, there's probably documentation that we have that would benefit you if we gave it to the state's attorney's office. We need some time. We can usually turn that around pretty quickly, but getting a call from the state's attorney at 9:30 in the morning saying, hey, this case is on for 10, That's a little bit of a turnaround that's tough for us. We might still be able to make it happen, but if we knew about it a week before, absolutely done. Consider it done. They have all the documentation that they need. And really, the more time, the better, because a lot of times medical providers don't send us all the documents until the very, very end. So if there were a situation in which we needed to get a chunk of these medical bills and records prior to a trial date that's on the criminal or traffic side, as long as we know 2-3 weeks ahead of time, which normally you have several months scheduling wise to know when you might be going to court as a witness, we can get ahead of that and get you as much of that as possible. So that's what I have for this week. Communication with your attorney, with your law firm, really not just in the injury cases, but with everything, super important, because if we get caught not knowing something that happened, it could be bad for us and for you. And you just don't really want that. You want your situation to go smoothly as possible, given the fact that it's not necessarily the best situation to deal with in the first place. So be well, be safe out there. As always, if you have questions for the podcast, email me here. Make sure you mention that you want it in the podcast. If you need those old back episodes, right there they are. BowersLawMD.com, right up at the top where it says podcast. That's where you'll find them. Lots of good information. Be safe out there. Be well. We'll see you next week right here, 11 a.m.